And where we need to be careful is, as we know, the building safety regulator process takes a very, very long time. Hi, it's Jamie from Evolution 5. In today's video, we're going to talk about cladding remediation, but specifically the new deadline placed on landlords. Last month, the government introduced the Remediation Bill. The Remediation Bill places a deadline on landlords to fix and rectify unsafe cladding. It also aims to speed up the process. The deadline placed on landlords is the end of 2029 for buildings over 18 metres and the end of 2031 for buildings between 11 and 18 metres. Landlords that do not meet these deadlines risk unlimited fines as well as possibly imprisonment. Official statistics published this year in May show that less than half of the 5,052 buildings with dangerous cladding have yet to be remediated. Under the new powers of the Remediation Bill, Homes England and local authorities, councils will be given the power to remediate buildings if the landlords fail to do so. So thinking about the deadline in relation to buildings over 18 metres, this means landlords have 52 months from now to act in and actually get these buildings remediated. When we look at some of the more complex schemes where you have a full residential development of multiple apartment blocks and buildings, you can conceivably be looking at 18 months to 24 months on site alone. So that's 2 years eaten into the 52-month period. Added to that, the pre-construction period for a project of that size could easily again be somewhere between 12 and 18 months. When we take into account the application process and the approval process procedure through the government funds such as the building safety funds in respect to buildings over 18 metres and the cladding safety scheme for buildings typically between 12 and 18 metres, as well as the building safety regulator approval periods, you know, that can quite easily bring those pre-construction periods up to those numbers. So what that ultimately means is from the date or the introduction of the Remediation Bill, landlords really need to start acting now and within the next 10 months to even have a hope of getting their buildings remediated by the deadline of the end of 2029. So what's the government's initiative or introduction of the new bill aims to speed up the cladding remediation process? In reality, what it's really done is meant that there will be a lot of cladding remediation projects commencing, and then they've obviously set the date at the back end. And where we need to be careful is, as we know, the building safety regulator process takes a very, very long time anyway. So you're not going to actually speed up the process of planning a project and executing a project. We also know the funding process takes quite some time. What we've got to be careful of, you've seen on one of our previous videos, is the building safety regulator is struggling at the moment with the number of application and processes and getting the approvals out in good time. And what we're probably going to see off the back of this remediation bill is a lot of landlords starting and commencing projects at relatively or probably the same time. So what we've got to really consider here is how many of these projects are going to then have submissions to the building safety regulator all at the same time. So I don't think whilst the government think they're going to speed up the process, what they're actually going to do is speed up action from landlords. So let's look at 10 things that you can do as a landlord to not miss the deadline. And we'll look at these in chronological order. So number one, you need to determine the height of the building, and you also need to determine that if you have unsafe cladding systems on your building. You can do this by appointing an expert surveyor. There are a lot of surveying firms in the marketplace that specialise in cladding remediation. Number two If you have a building over 18 metres, then you need to register this with the building safety regulator, which you can do online via one of the government portals. Number 3, you need to determine how you're going to fund the project. If you're a housing developer, you've probably already set aside a pot of money to deal with your legacy projects, to deal with unsafe cladding. If you don't have internal funds or a pot set aside, there is government funding. For projects over 18 metres, you'll be looking at the Building Safety Fund. And typically, and not exclusively, but for buildings between 11 and 18 metres, you'll be looking at the Cladding Safety Scheme. Number 4, you'll need to produce a fire risk assessment. For cladding remediation, you'll need to produce a FRAW, which stands for Fire Risk Assessment External Walls. It should be to PAS 9980, and ideally, if you're looking for funding, it should be from an approved panel of assessors, and the Cladding Safety Scheme has a list of those assessors that are approved. So that will be a bit of a precedent condition for funding. So number 5 is appointing a professional team. Assuming you've got government funding, this will be known as pre-tender support, PTS, which typically may be 10% of the envisaged value of the project. You may look to appoint a project manager to help with managing the project, a cost consultant, as well as a designer and a fire engineer to develop some initial proposals, prepare some employers' requirements, and obtain lawful planning consent. So number 6 is appointing a contractor. So once you've developed design proposals and got some employers' requirements, you'll be set to look to appoint a contractor. Given that these type of schemes can be complex, there's a lot of unknowns, and you want some early contractor engagement, it's a good idea to look at a 2-stage procurement process that ultimately looks at having a pre-construction service agreement with the contractor to start working and building up the proposals. Number 7 is to develop those proposals we just talked about to be able to issue and put a submission in to the building safety regulator. And in order to do so, you'll need a principal designer to look at the building regulation aspect, as well as competent professionals and advisors on the contractor team to be able to develop and make sure a compliant submission is made to the BSR. So number 8 is to sign the grant funding agreement. So once you've got the BSR approval, we know what the scope of works looks like, and we can work towards the final cost for the remediation work. At that point, you'll be in a position to submit the stage 2 application to the relevant fund. And once you've got approvals of funds, you'll be expected to sign the grant funding agreement. In the grant funding agreement, it places obligations on you, and you'll obviously have to meet those obligations, as well as some of the obligations will also be reporting during the construction period. Furthermore, there will be a cost recovery questionnaire which aims to demonstrate that you have attempted to look at cost recovery from other avenues prior to signing the grant funding agreement. Number 9 is carrying out the remediation work. So during this stage is known as the construction stage, if you like. So there's several things we need to look at is contract administration of the building contract between yourself and the building contractor. You'll also have the obligations we referred to under the grant funding agreement. Also during construction, there'll be other professionals that may need to be involved, and it may be a condition of the funding, and that might be compliance reporting as well as clerk of works. So during the construction phase, there'll be lots of reports, QA, as well as contract administration that needs to be undertaken. Number 10 is looking at completing the project. And at this stage, we're looking at final inspections and sign-offs. So we have final inspection by the clerk of works to make sure that the works have been completed in compliance and defect-free. We have sign-off practical completion certificate by the employer's agent or contract administrator. And then there'll be other things such as statutory sign-off by the building safety regulator or building control officer, as well as updates and reviews on things such as the EWS1 form and the FRAU to PAS 9980. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and for landlords and people who are responsible for remediating unsafe cladding, I hope there were some really good recommendations and advice there for you. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us, and we really look forward to hearing from you.